Hogwarts Legacy is an extremely popular game, and it's also a game that scales well above the consoles on PC, with higher end settings, including advanced ray tracing. The new PS5 Pro version promises to bring some of that PC scalability to console players though, with better visual options as well as Sony's bespoke PSSR upscaler. There are 4 full modes available here, along with other visual toggles to adjust the player experience. So what's the best option for pro players, and what kind of enhancements can we expect over the base console? I think the most interesting place to start here is with the updated Fidelity RT mode, which promises both ray-traced reflections and shadows on PS5 Pro. Shadows generally exhibit accurate-looking shadow penumbra, losing sharpness as they grow more distant from the casting object. With closer objects, shadows have a level of clarity and precision that the CSM solution used on PS5 before can't match. The new RT shadows are reconstructed from a lower resolution using a checkerboard rendering technique, but still appear detailed and coherent, even when the shadow position is changing rapidly. The basic fidelity of the RT shadows to the world is better much of the time, and that's the key advance here. Shadows follow optical principles, which isn't the same with CSMs. But there are a number of caveats that perhaps make this a less than ideal RT shadows implementation. Firstly, the BVH used to generate the RT shadows isn't updated one-to-one with the movement of all game objects. The foliage here, for instance, is animated convincingly with shadow maps, but isn't animated at all with RT shadows on Pro. More jarringly, the water wheel in this shot has a totally static shadow on Pro, while the shadow map solution rotates in line with the movement of the wheel itself. When repairing these structures, notice how the PS5 provides accurate shadows during the repair animation, whereas the Pro only accurately shadows their unrepaired and repaired states. This undoubtedly spares a lot of performance, and it usually doesn't have a huge impact on the game's visual presentation, but it does mark a noticeable regression from the CSM solution, especially in foliage-rich outdoor scenes. Secondly, the RT shadows sometimes exhibit some pop-in issues. When we run back and forth here, notice how the water wheel shadow pops in and out of existence, and how the shadows for the wooden slats change in position suddenly. It's possible these are falling back to a shadow map here. The CSMs on PS5 exhibit the classic cascade transitions we're used to, but these are handled a bit more elegantly, I'd say, with a gentle fade between cascades. Screen space shadows and SSAO remain in use with RT shadows as well, which means that a lot of the lighting occlusion issues present on PS5 are still here. Finally, a lot of the game's shadows are unchanged on PS5 Pro. As far as I can tell, the RT shadows typically only apply to the sun, or the primary light source in any given scene. In interior scenes, RT shadow coverage is minimal or non-existent. This is especially noticeable in dialogue sequences, which make heavy use of hand-placed light sources and often exhibit classic shadow map artifacts. Unreal Engine 4 doesn't have great support for techniques like RT shadows, and there's definitely a sense that the Pro is straining against legacy tech here. There are moments where the RT shadows are a clear step ahead, but they often exhibit odd inconsistencies. The situation with RT reflections is a bit rosier. The key improvement here is that the RT reflections operate at a higher resolution, twice the resolution according to the game's developer. Sharper, clearer RT reflections ensue, with markedly improved detail. This is especially obvious in this mirror, which shows the detail delta without any kind of roughness or unevenness to obscure any differences. The other major change is that RT reflections now apply to large bodies of water, taking place of the screen space reflection plus cube map combination that was used before. This sometimes improves the visual presentation, producing more stable reflection detail. But it's not all rainbows and path tracing. The RT reflections on water surfaces are often pretty noisy, with PSSR doing a less than stellar job at cleaning up their appearance. There are some issues with frustum culling, which you can observe on the water here, and sometimes the water reflections just have a broken appearance, like how this water flickers bizarrely. Sometimes the reflections appear slightly misaligned or overly simplified, such that they don't look especially convincing, which is typically a bigger issue at a distance. Volumetric fog also isn't represented in the RT reflections, sometimes creating a large discontinuity between the lighting in the reflections and the world that is being reflected. SSR captures this lighting much more effectively as long as it remains in screen space. The improved RT reflections resolution is certainly welcome, but I'm a little split on whether including RT reflections on larger bodies of water is a net upgrade or not. Hogwarts Legacy just doesn't feel technically equipped to handle RT reflections at this scale. I'm sure we'd see better results with a solution like Lumen in a more ray tracing friendly engine like Unreal Engine 5. Outside of the ray tracing, other visual settings look similar, with comparable draw distance and other settings tweakables. Image quality though has a quite substantial divergence, and not necessarily for the better. The Pro looks softer and has a noisy appearance, both common characteristics of PSSR, which is in use here. Foliage on Pro looks somewhat more natural and less aliased, but it also has a blurred appearance at range. I'd say the Pro is probably better at tamping down on various kinds of aliasing, but it's not a clear winner relative to PS5. In terms of the raw metrics, the PS5 version uses Unreal's TAA with a roughly 1440p typical resolution, which is then spatially upscaled using AMD's FSR1. PS5 Pro is operating from about 1728p typically and is using PSSR instead. I think it's probably going to 4K, though it's hard to say exactly because PSSR often doesn't do a great job of actually resolving detail comparable to a native resolution render. It is important to note though that this patch was released last year, so the PSSR upgrades that have been made since, which are evident in the recent Star Wars Jedi Survivor update, aren't present here. Performance is typically at or very close to 30 FPS here, without any frame pacing woes. I noticed some occasional drop frames during traversal, with more extended wobbles in Hogsmeade specifically. It mostly runs fine enough though when targeting 30 FPS. On base PS5, curiously performance is a little bit better, without the drops we noted on Pro. I think Hogwarts Legacy creates a positive first impression with its updated ray tracing, which certainly colored my impressions at the PS5 Pro preview event last September. But the more you poke around the retail build, the more issues become obvious with both the RT shadows and the updated RT reflections. There are some genuine quality wins, but a lot of areas where the non-RT solutions simply break less often, and the arguable image quality and performance regressions are unwelcome as well. Overall, it's a more inconsistent experience than the PS5 version in its Fidelity RT mode, and it's hard to say that it's a convincing improvement. The new Fidelity RT mode is the most interesting new mode variation here, but the other modes have something to offer as well. The non-RT Fidelity mode is pretty similar to its PS5 counterpart, offering similar visual settings as far as I can tell. Again, the key point of differentiation here is the Pro's use of PSSR, which produces a softer, noisier image that is less prone to obvious aliasing. It's not an offensive looking image by any means, though I suspect a good amount of players will prefer the crisper resolve of the base console, especially in foliage dense scenes. Internal resolutions counted at about 1728p on the base machine, with the Pro managing about 1728p as well. Framerate wise, we're generally hitting a locked 30 FPS, which is no great surprise as the base machine also hit 30 FPS consistently. The various stress tests I put the game through don't phase it, even Hogsmeade traversal, which does tend to push the consoles pretty hard. There's also a new performance mode, which appears to offer pretty similar visual settings, albeit with PSSR in use. Internally, the PS5 version is operating at about 1440p here, while the Pro is also about 1440p. Again, the image quality fight here produces a pretty equivocal result. The performance mode does generally hit 60 FPS on Pro, excepting some occasional drops, which seem traversal related in nature. These tend to be most substantial around the Hogwarts grounds and in Hogsmeade. Base PS5 is a similar story, dropping frames around the same stress points. Oddly though, I kept running into an issue with the PS5 Pro in performance mode, where every time I teleported to a location, the game would switch into Fidelity mode, halving the frame rate. A quick pop into the settings menu provided a temporary fix, but I'd encounter it the next time I teleported all the same. Hogwarts Legacy is a game of many modes, and I think covering the 120Hz modes in as much detail would be excessive, and they do present certain capture limitations as well. Suffice to say that there are two 120Hz exclusive modes here, a high framerate performance mode and a balanced mode. The HFR performance mode is similar to the performance mode, but with no framerate cap, and tends to hover around 80 FPS on average. Only players with VRR enabled should consider applying here. The balanced mode targets 40 FPS instead, with no ray tracing enabled. It's a pretty pedestrian kind of balanced mode, without a lot to recommend it over the performance mode in my opinion. But players who do want to venture here will find a reasonably consistent 40 FPS update. There's maybe a dip or two during traversal, but nothing all that disruptive. Hogwarts Legacy also packs a framerate unlocker, which can boost the performance of any of the game's various modes, except for the performance mode, which relies on the HFR performance mode at 120Hz output to provide a framerate unlock. The results aren't outstanding or anything, and really should only be considered on a VRR panel, though most of the time I'd still probably gravitate towards a locked framerate experience. I'm not that thrilled with Hogwarts Legacy on PS5 Pro. We're not seeing the kind of clear upgrade over PS5 that the Pro should represent in image quality, performance, or ray tracing. It's not really degraded over the base console, but it's also not offering a meaningful boost for Pro users. I'm also not that pleased with the available modes. There are 8 key modes here, essentially 4 plus unlocked FPS toggles, but image quality doesn't change much between them. The HFR toggles are available even without VRR, and the game's RT features are a mixed bag. I think most players are going to have a preference for the performance mode, so perhaps putting that front and center would have been a good call, or slimming down the selection somewhat. Both PSSR and the enhanced ray tracing provide solid back-of-the-box Pro features, but the actual visual outcome is pretty mixed. I think a better approach might be to use the same rendering setups as the base PS5 version for its various modes, but to exploit the additional power of the PS5 Pro GPU to enhance resolution and image quality with Unreal's TAA. Hogwarts Legacy already hits pretty solid resolution figures on PS5, and Pro could offer an unambiguous upgrade by dialing in somewhat higher numbers. In the absence of truly transformative upscaling technology or excellent engine support for ray tracing, that's perhaps the more sensible move. But Hogwarts Legacy is at least serviceable enough on Pro and generally inoffensive. It's just not a substantial upgrade over the base machine. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and press the bell for YouTube notifications. Check out the Patreon at digitalfoundry.net for exclusive and early access content, and to get in touch, use social media. Thanks for watching.